You're listening to Southern Fried Sports with Travis Reier on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Is Southern Fried Sports with Bama Online senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Make it through this year, I think I'm gonna put this bottle down. I guess as time goes on, I'll grow to miss it less than I will now. And I think I'm gonna tell her that I'm gonna go away for a while, till I can get this demon out.
11 a.m. on a Friday morning. It is time once again for Southern Fried Sports on your home for University of Alabama Athletics, Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. The Chocolate Lady and that staff back at it. They don't, it's not like Santa Claus, all right, out there at Peterbrook, where Santa takes a much-deserved respite after the 25th of December. They're right back in the shop out there at Peterbrook Chocolatier, getting all those great treats that you love so much. If you haven't been to Peterbrook, where have you been? Got to get by there. That chocolate popcorn, all those great hand-dipped items that you find in the store, whether it's the Granny Smith apples. They'll bathe one of those for you in a nice, generous coat of caramel. And then either the milk, white, or dark chocolate, they're going to dip that in. They'll put some accessories on that chocolate caramel dipped Granny Smith apple, too, for you. Out there at Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Joined on the show by the executive producer of Southern Fried Sports, Jacob Harrison, who together we combined to form the 60-bit band of Sports Talk Radio. And once again, Jacob, thank you for standing in yesterday, doing a great job, as you always do. That's much appreciated. And let's get ready for a big sports weekend, Jacob, around the University of Alabama, I guess.
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to hop on and take over. It was a lot of fun yesterday. I thought we had a lot of interesting topics to go over, but yeah, Alabama basketball, one step closer to clinching the SEC regular season title tomorrow against Vandy. Feel pretty good about that.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you've got the start of a baseball season. You've got Alabama softball. You've got the Power of the Pink meet with Alabama and LSU. So plenty of activity, despite the wintry weather from earlier in the week. Looks like we're going to have a fun weekend around the University of Alabama. Obviously, we will talk a good bit about Alabama-Vanderbilt basketball on the men's side, set for tomorrow at Coleman Coliseum. The Vanderbilt Commodores come to town, struggling under Jerry Stackhouse just a little bit. Vandy 6-11 overall, 2-9 in the SEC. Monster game midweek from Dylan Disu, the post for Vanderbilt. He had 29-16 against Kentucky. It wasn't enough, though. Scottie Pippen Jr., I don't think there's a Michael Jordan Jr. I don't think that junior is on this Vanderbilt team, but Scottie Pippen Jr., a very good player in his own right for the Doors, and it's going to be one or both of those guys that are going to have to carry Vanderbilt in this matchup with the Crimson Tide tomorrow. Very good players, but no other double-digit scorers of note for this Vanderbilt team. So, as Jacob alluded to, a real opportunity after the postponement from Wednesday to Thursday to, we'll see, with that road trip to Texas A&M, an opportunity to move closer to that regular season title. 205-342-9904 is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line if you'd like to jump on board with us. We'll talk about that. We'll go in depth on Alabama Vanderbilt basketball. We will also get into Nate Oates and that contract extension for Nate Oates. Talk about a payday. Friday is usually a payday, right? I'd say it is for Mr. Nate Oates. Has this program, again, on the cusp of a conference title in year 2 under his direction. And when you start to look around college basketball, we're getting to a transition cycle, a transition period, it feels like anyway, when you consider just the blue bloods in college basketball right now. Look at Duke. How much longer Coach K going to keep scrapping it around like he is? Scraping around. I mean, K can pretty much count on a top 3 recruiting class on an annual basis. So I don't see him just walking away from that kind of talent, but you talk about a tumultuous season. It's been tough on everybody. But Duke, a prime example of struggles during a COVID-impacted season. North Carolina, Roy Williams. How much longer is Roy going to bang around in Chapel Hill? You got NCAA issues at Kansas. Cal struggling this year. The Sharks are circling a little bit up in Lexington. Probably not to a point of buying into it, but safe to say the Kentucky people aren't happy. This isn't Kentucky basketball this season, the kind that they sign off on. So you consider not just the annual carousel that is college basketball coaching, really college sports in general, college football for sure, but you think about the kind of jobs that might be coming open here in the very near future, and it absolutely makes sense. And again, the success of this team this year, and you consider where recruiting's at. You got J.D. Davison coming in here next year. No signs of slippage on the recruiting trail, really. This staff has shown you that in addition to being successful as it relates to recruiting with the high school prospects, they've successfully gone out, worked the junior college ranks. Keon Ellis, James Rojas, these last couple of years. They've worked the grad transfer route successfully. Jordan Bruner comes to mind instantly. They've worked the transfer route in general with Javon Quinterly. So program in very good shape. Very good shape. And Greg Byrne and the University of Alabama, very wise to try to keep things status quo and come with that big bump. And, again, the big buyout as we talk about potential openings in our midst in the world of big-time college basketball. Also, from a football perspective, we will get into some transfer portal talk. The transfer portal stays hot. And we learned earlier today that Ali Cahoe, looking to make the move from the University of Alabama. 3 years in the program for Ali Cahoe, inside linebacker who actually was set to play at the University of Washington coming out of high school, was able to get a release from his UW scholarship and made his way to Tuscaloosa. And it's tough at Alabama. It's tough at just about any spot on that football team to make good use of that window when it presents itself. And when you think about Ali Cahoe's 3 years at Alabama, and man, he's been a really good special teams player. He's what they call a core 4. Any of the core 4 special teams units you could pretty much expect at some point or and cumulatively, Ali Cahoe was going to be a part of those core 4 special teams, and he was really good in those areas. Had a couple of block punts in 2019. But as far as the inside linebacker positions go, 2019 was that year for Ali Cahoe to make his move. Year 2 in the program, Dylan Moses, Josh McMillan go out with those August knee injuries before the 2019 season, and that was the window in retrospect. And Christian Harris jumped right through it as a true freshman. Shane Lee started every game at middle linebacker in 2019. And so then you've got Christian Harris embedded at weak side linebacker going into 2020, and Dylan's coming back. So that's pretty much got you locked out there. And even with Dylan Moses moving on after the 2020 season, Christian Harris does return as an every down guy at inside linebacker. And in the 2020 season, what we saw beyond Moses and Harris was Jalen Moody. And then there's still this very real possibility out there for 2021 of Henry To'oTo'o joining the mix from the University of Tennessee. But really, when you think about that opportunity for Ali Kaho, it was in 2019. Really, probably August and September of 2019. Because even into the season 2 years ago, Alabama, Ali Kaho you were seeing him getting legitimate reps at inside linebacker. They were playing different guys. But that window, it shuts quick. And you've got some young players. You think about Ali Kaho, and yes, he's important on special teams, but there's guys coming. Demoy Kennedy, Jackson Bratton, guys that can very much fill that kind of role as well. 205-342-9904 is the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Let's go there right now. We'll check in with Deacon first with Johnny on deck. Deacon, how you doing?
Doing good, brother. Doing good. How you doing?
I am doing super, sir.
I was just going to make a comment on what you were talking about the Blue Bloods this year. Ask your opinion. I've heard a lot of people say it's a COVID issue, which to a point it is, but the Blue Bloods have become Louisville, Kentucky, North Carolina, Kansas, Duke. They've become the bastions of one and done for the most part, especially Calipari at Kentucky. Now, don't you think that more than the COVID issue, it's more of a continuity issue where with COVID, they haven't had the opportunity to be together and practice and work together as they normally would in a normal non-COVID year. And so basically what you've got is a team of high school all-stars. You've got first-year college players, high school all-stars, but they've not had the chance to become a team yet. Don't you think that's more of the issue than just to base it simply on COVID?
Yeah, I think you could say, too, though, that COVID, as you alluded to, impacted even that because the regimen that's typically in place has been largely disrupted because of COVID.
COVID's the cause of it, but it just, and I look, and it's funny that it's across the board. For the most part, the Blue Bloods that have become the home of the one and dones, because they get the 5 stars and, Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, they may have, between those 4 schools, may have every one of the top 10 players in the country. And they all know they're going to play a year and go pro, but they just haven't had the time to build a cohesiveness as a unit.
Right.
And so that's the reason you're looking at a Kentucky team that's, winning less than 40% of their games.
Well, maturity is huge, and I talked about this with Cecil Hurd a couple of weeks ago and drew the comparison to even football. Look at the maturity level of that Alabama team in the football season. The older teams, the more experienced teams are being rewarded. I don't think there's any doubt about that, especially when you talk about look at Alabama basketball this season. Herb Jones been around, John Petty been around, Alex Reese been around. You bring in a veteran in Jordan Bruner from Yale. And when you're 22, I'm not saying you always make the greatest decisions at 22, 23. I know I did not, but you're probably more apt to be able to deal with an on-the-fly scenario and not get distracted and not become discouraged. You're maybe a little more resilient. You've done the college life thing. There's other aspects to this, too. The day-to-day life of college students in general has been changed greatly. So you're dealing with that side of the thing as well. And when you're 17, 18, 19 years old and encountering it for the first time to begin with, I think youth is it's more of a concern this year than it's been in previous years.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, Travis, when I was in college in the 80s, you look at it, you feel like you're fixing to get your first taste of freedom. Well, these kids, you think about freshmen on the football team this year, what they had to go through and the obstacles they faced. You know, they're basically going from what they thought was not freedom actually felt like freedom their senior high school year as compared to what they're going to have to do their freshman year in college. And speaking of the basketball team, I cannot say enough for Greg Byrne go ahead and extending Nate Oates and the administration, but also just looking at the team. Herb Jones to me is just heroic. I played sports and what he has played through just astounds me. It literally astounds me. He plays through pain every night and leaves 100% on the floor. And to hear, listening to Coach Oates talk about him, it just really brings home, what that kid is willing to put on the court for his teammates and his school. And it's just, I love watching this team. It's my favorite team since Wimp was coach.
It's a lot of fun, no doubt about it. Anything else, Deacon?
That's it, Travis. You have a good day, brother.
You do the same. We appreciate the phone call. Deacon checking in on a Friday morning. And I think he said it with Herb Jones. It's not just that he's played through injury and pain. It's that he continues to play the way Herb Jones plays. It isn't always pretty. It isn't always that Herb Jones plays well. But he plays with every ounce of his being. And even when he's not comfortable, and he's obviously uncomfortable in certain circumstances, you get the same Herb Jones. And I do think Deacon made a point about what these freshmen had to go through in their first year. I think there's a dividend to that if you're Nick Saban on the football side and also Nate Oates on the basketball side. Because in terms of the regimen and the discipline that's been required to do what, say, Alabama football did and what Alabama men's basketball is in the process of doing, and also the women's team with a win last night at Florida. It looks like they're going to make their first NCAA tournament since 1999. There's a benefit big picture-wise to that. Everything else is going to seem easier, I got to think, if you're a first-year player at somewhere like the University of Alabama. Let's go back to the phone lines, and let's check in with Johnny on a Friday morning. Johnny, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, sir.
I got a very important question for you. You mentioned a crock pot chili type
soup. Yeah, pawpaw soup.
Yeah,
pawpaw soup.
Did you put? So am I correct? You're putting onion soup in that with?
Here's what you just do some ground beef. You do that Lipton's onion soup mix. You just pour it in there in the crock pot. And then you do some crushed tomatoes, some canned tomatoes, and then a little bit of beef broth in there too, to soup it up. And then you just pour in those frozen mixed vegetables. That's all you got to do. That's it. And you're going to have pawpaw soup. It's great stuff. I'm probably off a little bit. I need the chocolate lady. The chocolate lady's awesome because before my grandfather passed away and like my grandmother too, she made sure there were like 3 or 4 things between those two that you just, you couldn't beat, right? I'm sure you had grandparents like that or we all have. And
right.
you had to get those 2 or 3 or 4 things from them before they left us. And pawpaw soup was definitely one of them.
Yeah, I have that 3 or 4 sheets of paper written down.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to give it a try because it's freezing down here in Florida. So I think it's 86 today.
South Florida blues, man. The South Florida blues.
Yeah, we got a cold front coming through. I think it's going to be 75 tomorrow. So.
Yeah, I hear you.
I wanted to pose a question to you. What do you think's going to? I mean, first of all, the SEC, they have that like Alabama in '60 where they'll do like the whole season, and I caught that the other day, and I was watching it, and I was thinking to myself, the belly is as full as it's ever going to be. I mean, that was about as perfect a season, other than Waddle getting hurt and Landon getting hurt, it was perfect. I mean, the kicker didn't even miss a kick.
I know.
So
It's crazy.
and crazy. And then you beat the teams they beat: Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida, Georgia, Auburn. You can't draw it up any better than that team this season they had.
I was watching the same thing, Johnny. I was going to add real quick. This team won the Rose Bowl too. I mean, you're not going to immediately remember it that way because it wasn't played in the Rose Bowl or in Pasadena, but that goes down. Rose Bowl champs on top of everything else, right?
Yeah. I mean,
or with everything else, not on top, but with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything other than those two injuries that you could add in your perfect, make-believe season. It was just unbelievable.
No, it was.
So it got me thinking, and it made me think to ask you, because you follow the team so closely. When you kind of what we have ahead of us, obviously, you have to have a letdown at some point. Come on, that was just too perfect. I mean, I don't. So the two questions were: who do you think we're going to miss more, a certain player or Steve Sarkisian next year?
I'm always going to go with the Jimmies and the Joes, and Sark was great. Don't get me wrong, but as I've talked about before, think about what Sark inherited in 2019. I mean, he inherited a ready-made quarterback situation in Tua Tagovailoa. The 4 wide receivers were still intact. And while there was attrition, in as much as anything, you could give Sark a lot of credit for what we saw in 2020 and how that team did adapt after the injury to Jalen Waddle specifically. All the credit in the world to Steve Sarkisian. But you're going to have more of a makeover on offense in 2021 than you've had probably since 2016 or so. Now, you had that stretch in 14, 15, 16, where you had quarterback, questions, quarterback competitions, new quarterbacks. So, that isn't entirely new, but I'm just talking about just based on what Sark had during his 2 years, full years on the job, and what Bill O'Brien's walking into. It's much more of a revamp for Bill O'Brien than it was, in my opinion, either of the 2 years that Sark was at Alabama.
Yeah,
and that's because of people.
I'm sorry?
And that's because of the people, the players, the talent.
My only concern moving forward with the quarterback situation is he just physically looked – he's obviously very talented, incredibly talented, but physically looked very small on the field, and it makes you kind of wonder, because Mac looked the part, he grew to that, obviously. So you wonder if Bryce Young could grow to that.
And it's tough because Mac had 3 years basically to get there, and Bryce missed a spring that he should have had last year, had a very different kind of freshman year like the other newcomers. But I think, Johnny, you're just going to have to adapt your way of looking at this guy as more along the lines of a Kyler Murray or, that kind of player. And, I don't know if he's going to be as dynamic as Kyler Murray, but I think he has that type of skill set. I'll tell you what I liked about Bryce Young last season was on third downs when they did let him throw it, he hit a lot of third down throws. And I know it was mop-up time and things like that, but, I think the guy has a real chance to be special. Is he ready to be that in year 2, especially on an offense that's going to have a lot of changing faces around him? It's going to be a lot to ask, but I don't think they're going to be afraid to ask it of him, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, I know you got to get to your break, but I just want to say this too real quick after watching that 60, Bama and 60. Credit goes to Najee Harris. The guy was unbelievable, and the thing that stuck out to me is he never fumbled. As many carries and hits as that guy took, rarely did he put that ball down.
Had the one at Ole Miss on the late whistle Forward progress had been stopped at the goal line, and that's college football. They let the whistle just sit. It's not like the NFL at all. And so he had that one, but you're right. Throughout his career, just money when it came to ball security on top of everything else. Hey, Johnny, we appreciate the call.
Yes. See you later, Trevor.
Take care. Stay warm down there. Johnny trolling us with the South Florida Blues here in mid-February. We're going to head to our first break when we come back. Charlie Potter, BamaOnline.com, joins us on a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports right after this.
Alabama. This is Crimson Tide Today. It's a daily update on Bama sports, and it's brought to you by Everwood Treatment Company, the official treated lumber of Alabama athletics. Everwood, wood treated right. Hello again, everybody. I'm Roger Hoover. Alabama head football coach Nick Saban announced the addition of Jay Valai to the Crimson Tide staff on Thursday as the cornerbacks coach. Valai arrives in Tuscaloosa after one season coaching cornerbacks at the University of Texas for then defensive coordinator Chris Ash. During his time in Austin, Valai helped the Longhorns' Josh Thompson earn second-team All-Big 12 honors after making 28 tackles with 3 tackles for a loss and an interception last season. Valai was a 4-year letter winner at Wisconsin, where he captained the Badgers' 2010 Rose Bowl team. He earned second-team All-Big 10 honors in 2008 and 2009. He totaled 153 tackles, 4 forced fumbles, and a pair of interceptions in 48 career games. He also appeared in 4 bowl games with the Badgers, including winning the 2010 Big Ten Championship and advancing to the Rose Bowl that season. I'll have more in a moment.
Everwood Treatment Company is wood treated right. Everwood is the most technologically advanced pressure treated wood available. That means no rotting, no decay, no problems. Just wood treated right. Everwood is your treated wood source and the official pressure treated lumber of the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you're looking to add or replace decks, outdoor structures, or commercial jobs, choose Everwood for wood treated right. If you need it, we'll get it to you. To locate your local Everwood store, visit everwoodtreatment.com. Everwood Treatment, official lumber of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
We've got you covered for Alabama men's basketball against Vanderbilt on Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa. Alabama remains atop the SEC standings at 12-1 in conference play, while Vanderbilt is 2-9 in the league. Tip-off with the Commodores is set for noon Central, with our coverage on the network beginning at 11 a.m. And that's your Bama update. Crimson Tide Today brought to you by Everwood. Crimson Tide Today is a production of the Crimson Tide Sports.
Sky becoming mostly sunny this afternoon, the high 41. Clear tonight with the low at 23. And over the weekend, the weather turning warmer. A good supply of sunshine tomorrow and Sunday. The high tomorrow 54, Sunday's high at 61 degrees. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.
Tide 100.9. For more coverage of Alabama football, visit us at Tide100.9.com or download the free Tide 100.9 app.
The Crimson Tide will not be denied.
Let me tell y'all what it's like being male, middle class, and white. It's a bitch if you don't believe. Listen up to my new CD, Sham On. I got running through my brain, so intense that I can't explain.
Back with more of a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. And at this time on Fridays, we like to check in with my colleague there at BamaOnline.com. Charlie Potter does an outstanding job covering the Alabama Crimson Tide for us there at BOL. No shortage of topics for Charlie Potter on this Friday morning. And Charlie, as we bring you on here, I guess we'll start with your report along with 247sports.com earlier today, pointing out that senior linebacker Ali Cahoe has entered the transfer portal for the Alabama Crimson Tide. How did that one strike you, Charlie?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come as too much as a surprise because Alabama's pretty stacked at linebacker. I know they're losing Dylan Moses, and a guy like Josh McMillan is turning pro, but you still have guys like Jalen Moody and Shane Lee who've played a lot of football, and really last year when we saw Christian Harris go down with an injury, and kind of the first guy off the bench was Jalen Moody. And you and I have talked about it on our podcast with the possibility of Alabama even adding to that position group with a transfer and Henry To'oTo'o. Of course, that's not official or anything yet, but just a possibility. I mean, the room is pretty stacked, and I think, with Ali Cajo, he's a talented player. He's a guy that's just a special teams ace, really, for Alabama these last 3 years. But, the window to get on the field there at that inside linebacker position is not a very wide one. And, maybe he just sees greener pastures, down the road. And, for him, he's a guy, I know he's dealt with stuff off the field and things like that. But for him to stick around for 3 years, give it a shot at a place like Alabama, you got to commend him. And now he's taking the opportunity to look elsewhere. He actually shared on social media a pretty lengthy post thanking Alabama and Nick Saban and the support staff and all those people for his time. And now he's going to be moving on. That's the sixth transfer Alabama's had, whether it was during this past season or this off season. And it's just kind of the way that college football is these days. You're going to see that. And for a position like inside linebacker at Alabama, these guys, if they don't get on the field after a few years, it's likely they're going to look elsewhere.
Alabama loses a piece in Ali Cajo, but adds one in Jay Valai, the cornerbacks coach that has come on to replace Carl Scott in the secondary there for Alabama. And we had talked in previous appearances by you here on the program and also on the Bama Online podcast about sort of the ingredients, the recipe that you expect Nick Saban to follow at this point when it comes to making this hire. Would you say that pretty much all of those ingredients were checked this time around?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, he's the fifth official addition to this on-field coaching staff. Of course, the two former NFL head coaches were brought on to coordinate the offense and to work with the offensive line. And then you had two guys that are pretty well known as recruiters, in Robert Gillespie and Jay Graham. And I think just reading Nick Saban's statement with the release of the hire being official of Jay Valai, he said that he's an excellent young coach who possesses outstanding knowledge and enthusiasm for the game. And he added that he's a really good teacher and an outstanding recruiter who works tirelessly at his craft. So, I think just that statement alone, that's what you expect from a Nick Saban coach is, he's a good developer of talent and he's an outstanding recruiter who's going to work hard. And I think that's really what you have to work for Nick Saban, especially with a younger guy in the profession, and that's what Jay Valai is. So it makes a lot of sense. I don't think there was a shortage for people wanting this job. But Jay Valai, he's been a busy guy just moving around the country and landing these new gigs, which in the coaching profession, I guess you can't be mad at with, having opportunities to work at some great places. But it seems like he's settled in on Tuscaloosa, and by all accounts, just from what he brings to the table as a recruiter and a young coach, an up-and-coming coach in the profession, it sounds like Alabama made a pretty decent hire.
Speaking of decent hires that seem to be settling in, Nate Oates gets a nice extension, a big bump in pay. We talked about this earlier in the program. You look around college basketball in general, not just the carousel that seemingly spins on an annual basis, but the potential for the blue blood type jobs to maybe come open a little bit more in the next year or two than what we've seen in the last decade or so. Sensible, I guess, from that standpoint, but also, Charlie, tell us what you know about the renovation. I know you sat down with Greg Byrne, athletic director here recently, the pending renovation to Coleman Coliseum. And I guess in some ways, if that's going to be a little bit more out there, pretty smart by Greg Byrne to financially compensate the head coach at a high clip.
Yeah, I mean, with what Nate Oates has done this season and a quick turnaround really of the roster, it makes sense for him to get an extension because you're right. I mean, there are blue blood programs out there that are struggling and having odd seasons. So you want to try to ensure your program as much as you can. And it makes a lot of sense, even though Alabama's yet to make an NCAA tournament. I think we would all be shocked if that doesn't happen this year. But we haven't seen just what he can do there with this team. And, of course, you get a few more recruiting cycles in here and really see what the program can look like. But it makes sense. And then, financially to compensate him, I think it's probably at the top of the list in terms of priority because what we just outlined there. But in terms of Coleman, they, of course, with the Crimson Standard, they did Phase 1 first, which included Bryant-Denny Stadium and the Malmore Athletic Facility, and I believe Rhodes Stadium, the softball stadium. And then, they're going to complete that. I think that's almost done, if not already finished, and then move on to Phase 2 and see what that looks like. And with the pandemic, there's obviously some financial realities that they have to take into account. And then, Greg Byrne, I think more than anybody, because it's probably the number one question he gets is, he knows that people want to see at least a refurbished arena, if not a brand new one. And, they want to see or make sure they have a long-range plan for what works for the basketball program. Of course, in gymnastics, too, because that's going to be over at Coleman as well. But, they have some money they have to make up, but I think that's really where the attention is going to turn now. So, we'll see what happens. But I think it's clear that they're investing as much as they can into the basketball program. And with the success Alabama's had on the court this season, it makes sense to, ensure that they have Nate Oates for a while longer. Of course, anything can happen. Teams, if they want him, can make offers and things like that. But I think it helps Alabama in this case to hope they have him for a few more years.
Got some pretty good buyout protection, I would say, with Nate Oates. By the way, I think Nate going to address the media here maybe coming up in a little bit. Who's going to ask him for a loan, do you think, in that press gathering?
Yeah, I'll see if he can at least buy my lunch when we talk to him. I think we're actually going to talk to him about 10 minutes. So, okay. I say that. I don't think Alabama's been on time for a single Zoom call this year, but he'll be talking here pretty soon.
All right. Well, hit him up for a loan coming up here on that Zoom call. Hey, Charlie, the game itself tomorrow, Alabama men's basketball hosting Vanderbilt. I'm sure the narrative going into this one is to, not leave yourself exposed against a subpar Vanderbilt team coming in here, because Vanderbilt has won on the road at Mississippi State here recently. Pretty good Mississippi State team. I believe Vanderbilt went in there and thumped them pretty good. So I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot of that too.
Oh yeah, outside of talking about the contract and things like that, the talk of not overlooking Vanderbilt would be big, and I think it's advantageous for a couple of reasons that they didn't play the Texas A&M game, because one, you get some rest for guys that are banged up. We know Herb Jones has been battling with that back injury, even though he looked really good last time out. To get him some days where he's not just taxing his body is beneficial. Same goes for a lot of other guys that are dealing with injuries. So that's beneficial. But you don't the Alabama A&M game I think was one that people are looking forward to, even though A&M's near the bottom of the SEC, just because they go back on the road, and it's one step closer to clinching the SEC regular season title. But this is a matchup between the top team in the league and the bottom team in the league. So yeah, I mean it's going to liken to kind of like last year's. I hate to mention football when talking about basketball. It's one of my pet peeves. But the Arkansas game last year, it was sandwiched in between regular season game and the SEC championship, and Nick Saban and those guys were talking about how they can't overlook this team, and I think that's what Nate Oates and the players will do today. I think, like you said, Vanderbilt's shown they're capable of beating anybody. They haven't had a lot of success with that this season, but you don't want to in this final stretch when you're trying to accomplish something that hasn't happened in a long time. You don't want to overlook a team and get thumped on your home floor.
Yeah, you mentioned Arkansas in relation to football, but, man, the matchup next Wednesday night in Fayetteville, the two best teams in the SEC, I don't think anyone would argue, especially right now with Arkansas playing at the level that it is. The trap, the prototype trap game tomorrow at Coleman Coliseum for Alabama. Charlie, as we let you go here, I know it doesn't feel like it, but we're going to have some hardball and softball around Tuscaloosa this weekend. Are you energized about the start of baseball, not just with Alabama, but your Braves? Were you pleased with your Braves off season? They got Ozuna signed and wrapped up. Where are you at on your baseball fever-ometer, I guess you could say?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it from a weather standpoint. that's for sure. But no, it's exciting. Heck, I mean, we've talked about it numerous times. I mean, to be able just to have live sports to watch and enjoy is something I think that we cherish a little bit more now, given, we saw baseball season get cut short last year. But the Braves, I mean, to get Ozuna back, to add some starting pitching help, I think you can't be much happier than with what they did in the off season. And then for Alabama baseball, just hearing from Brad Bohannon and the players this week, I think they're excited to get on the field. They're still a young team. They have some recognizable names back in the lineup that Alabama fans are going to be familiar with, but it's a young team that hasn't played a lot of games because, as we all know, their season was cut short, 17 games in, 1 game short of the start of SEC play, and they haven't played in 10, 11 months. So I think they have a lot to prove. We've seen them get some notoriety in some preseason rankings, and then we saw the SEC, what the coaches voted for the preseason, and Alabama was picked to finish last in the SEC West and I believe 12th overall. So, yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity for them to prove themselves, and I think a lot of people are excited to watch what this team can do with the Joe this season.
Good thing about Connor Prelip being your Friday night guy on the bump for Alabama baseball is that on a day like today with that 3 o'clock first pitch, I think Connor can get you out of there before dark. He can get you out of there before don't even need to turn the LED lights on with Connor Prelip at a 3 o'clock start. He'll deal and get you out of there. Well, Charlie, as always, we appreciate the time, my man. Always great stuff with us here on Southern Fried Sports, but certainly all the time at BamaOnline.com with Charlie Potter and the rest of our staff. Have a great weekend, Charlie.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.
There he goes, Charlie Potter. Charlie Potter does an outstanding job for BamaOnline.com. If you haven't already, give Charlie a follow on the Twitter at Charlie_Potter. Potter. And, of course, Bama Bash, Alabama softball. You've got now LSU for 2 games, right, this weekend? Gardner-Webb couldn't make the trip. So you have 2 non-con games against a top 10 team in the LSU Tigers. I told you on Wednesday, your Saturday's set, man. Your Saturday's absolutely set. 12 o'clock, Alabama Vanderbilt men's basketball. 2 o'clock, stumble over to the Joe, watch 6-7 innings. 4 o'clock, you head over to the Rhodes House, and you got Alabama LSU softball. That's pretty doggone good Saturday afternoon, if you ask me. Alabama women's basketball, by the way, we talked about that earlier in the show. Big win on the road last night in Gainesville over the Florida Gators. Florida likes to play some zone defense. That doesn't match up so well against this Alabama team. But the Crimson Tide now 7-6 in the league and will get Mississippi State for Senior Day on Sunday afternoon at Coleman Coliseum, continuing to try to make their way to the NCAA tournament on the women's side. So you got some big women's basketball this weekend as well on campus. Going to head to a break. When we come back, Pops. You know what we're going to talk with Pops about today? Did you know that Pops once tried out for a team in the World Football League? Yeah, we're going to ask Pops about that experience and a whole lot more when Southern Fried Sports, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier, returns right after this.
Sky becoming mostly sunny this afternoon, the high 41. Clear tonight with the low at 23. And over the weekend, the weather turning warmer. A good supply of sunshine tomorrow and Sunday. The high tomorrow 54. Sunday's high at 61 degrees. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.
The flagship station for Alabama Crimson Tide football.
Alabama touchdown.
Only on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
At the bottom, I thought it was my fault.
Back with more of a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BamaOnline.com, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. And on Fridays, we like to wrap up the week with the one, the only Pops, who joins us now on the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. Pops, as we bring you on here, how did you perform on Valentine's Day? We were worried about that. How did you come through in the clutch, Pops, for Nana?
I thought I did real well. I got her a great Valentine card.
Wow.
Yeah, I was proud of that.
A great one.
And I didn't get her any Skittles this year. She was kind of disappointed.
Were they out?
but I did get her some very nice kisses, Hershey Kisses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You went all out.
Yeah, I went all out.
Any Winn-Dixie roses or?
No, believe it or not, I went by there and I wasn't happy with what they had. So I kind of skipped those this year.
So a card and some Hershey Kisses. I mean, what is Nana in the 7th grade or something? I mean, that's what I got my 7th grade little girlfriend, for Valentine's Day, Pops. A card and some Hershey Kisses?
Hershey's Kisses. They're a new kind of, they're like...
they're the deluxe kisses.
Chocolate and cherries or something. I don't know.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
They're special. They have to be special on Valentine's Day.
Did you write a sort of romantic note in the card?
Yeah, but forever, Pop.
That's what she's scared of, forever. It scares her when you write that, Pops.
Oh, Lord.
Hey, Pops, do you really like sports this time of year? Because you get the college baseball and the softball going, with the hoops, and you like the college baseball and the college softball. You been to any games so far?
I follow both. Yeah. And I usually go to both, and I'm planning on doing that this year, but this pandemic, we don't go as much. We won't be going as often.
Uh-huh.
But I do enjoy it.
What about our Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp AA affiliate?
Jumbo Shrimp.
Any Thirsty Thursdays? They're gonna crank the Thirsty Thursdays. Yeah, move to AAA. Yeah.
We're big time. We're getting to be big time, and that's always good. That's always a good time of the year. Mm-hmm. They'll have limited seating, and that'll affect the Thirsty Thursdays.
Yeah. We worry about you on those Thirsty Thursdays.
Oh, those Thirsty Thursdays are terrific.
Yeah.
The
he likes to stay.
Is unbelievable.
Yeah, you've talked about that. He likes to stay all 9 innings, maybe some extra innings.
We don't go home early. It doesn't matter what the score is.
Uh-huh.
We sit there to the very last out.
Very last out. Yeah. Hey, Pops, I'm reading this USFL book by Jeff Pearlman. As a kid of the USFL, growing up in the 80s, and living in a town with a USFL team, I mean, it was awesome. It was absolutely the best. And I know we had teams in Birmingham, Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando ended up with a team. New Orleans made a cameo in the league. New Orleans actually went Boston, New Orleans, Portland. That was the USFL with the Breakers. But it got me to thinking. I remember you telling me you tried out for the Jacksonville team in the World Football League, I guess it was, many years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a few days ago.
A few days ago. Now, was that just an open call?
Yeah, it was an open tryout. And it was in the paper, they were looking for a punter. And we went out there. There was probably 10 to 15 guys out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy that could bomb it.
Yeah.
And he was completely on another level from me. I couldn't believe this guy wasn't playing for somebody.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I didn't make it, but I enjoyed it, and it was good to to see the competition. I enjoyed watching the competition too.
Pops, were you a 2-step punter?
Yes, that's it.
1-2.
No
boom.
more than 2 steps.
Yeah, you can't do more than 2.
You don't want to get that ball blocked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you your preference, I believe, was to punt with just a sock on, if you could, but I guess you couldn't always do that.
Yeah, I like to kick and punt with just socks on. couldn't do that.
Now
And,
you would kick straight on field goals, but just with a sock on?
Yeah, with a sock on.
How'd you do that and not break your toes, Pops?
It never did hurt my toes. I don't know why. I don't understand what was going on. But
did you hit the ball with
the contact point just felt better with a sock on instead of a shoe.
Huh. And you kick straight on with no shoe, you better catch it just right. You know that.
Oh yeah.
I would think.
Yeah. I enjoyed punting and kicking and stuff like that. I enjoyed football. Period.
What sport would you say you were most naturally gifted in?
That I was what now?
Most naturally gifted in. What was your natural sport? What came easiest to you?
I'm sure that would have to be baseball. I enjoyed baseball a lot. And I love football and basketball, but I just wasn't good enough in either one of those. Wasn't tall enough in basketball, of course, but and I wasn't big enough for football.
Wish you were a little bit taller. Wish you were a baller.
I enjoyed it. But baseball, I guess, was about all I could do, and
you always had the eye hand.
I enjoyed that.
You always had the eye-hand coordination. You were a good tennis player back in your day. Pretty good.
I enjoyed tennis. I sure did. And I wish I could still play. But,
you didn't enjoy golf as much because everybody cheats. You can't enjoy it like you'd like to.
No, I enjoyed golf, but what I enjoyed more than the golf was the scenery.
Yeah.
I love, because golf courses look so nice and all that, and I enjoy watching other people play golf too.
And cheat,
I can
but they all cheat.
And enjoy what the other guys play.
But they all cheat, right?
Huh?
They all cheat at golf, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The provisionals, they like those provisionals.
Gimme putts. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing about golf, the only person you're cheating is yourself when you do stuff like that. That's the only person that's being affected.
Game of honor.
I enjoy the beauty of the golf course.
Yeah, hard to beat. Well, Pops, have a good weekend, my man. And we appreciate the trip down your World Football League memory lane there. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, I'll talk at you later.
There he goes, Pops on a Friday. That's going to do it for a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports. Appreciate Jacob Harrison, as always, producing the show. Charlie Potter of BOL, and of course Pops rounding things out for us. Lunch Whistle on this Friday, Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Always great. The weekend certainly no different. You'll find the Alabama-Vanderbilt game on those television screens tomorrow at lunchtime at Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Until 11 a.m. on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.
I've landed